Hi, my name's Eddie DeGarmo, and my official title is I'm president of EMI CMG Music Publishing. A little about myself. I didn't grow up in Nashville. I grew up in Memphis and started playing in bands really by the time I was 9 years old. I actually grew up across the street from Graceland Mansion. Went to high school with Elvis's three stepbrothers. Trick-or-treated from Elvis and he gave me $1. You know, unfortunately I spent it, but he did. And grew up in the Memphis music scene in the 60s. I was in a soul band, you know, along with the days of Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett, and signed my first record contract when I was just 14 years old with Al Green's label, London Records, High Records. And it was 3 years after that I started writing songs about my faith. And other people said, well, you know, you're doing rock music, but you're talking about God. You just can't do that, especially in the South. What's wrong with you? And what I didn't realize is it was the fledgling days of Christian music. I had a very personal encounter with, you know, I mean, I really think it was with God when I was a teenager. You know, I was indifferent than other kids. I grew up in the 60s and I went through all the same things that all of us did in the 60s, trying to figure out who we were and doing the crazy stuff that, you know, that we all did to try to figure that stuff out. And I had a very life-changing experience, and I just started writing songs about it. And the public told me that I was writing Christian music. I didn't know that. I was just writing songs about my faith that was very important to me. I never knew that I could be quite so controversial in what I was doing. And I never knew that when all of a sudden I started writing songs about my faith to rock and roll music in 1972, that the bars didn't necessarily want me playing there, nor did the churches. So it was definitely kind of a self, you know, journey, you know, trying to figure out where I fit in. I'm still not sure I figured that out, but I did attend. In those days, it was Memphis State. I was a music major. I made it through 2 semesters, and my musical theory teacher came to me, and he was very kind words. He said, Eddie, he said, I really like you, but you're going to have to find something else to do. He said, you're just not ever going to make it in this business. And he was right. I mean, in doing what I was doing, you know, he was right, because I was trying to be a piano major, and really I'd just grown up playing blues and rock music. So shortly after that, I got a call one day, and on the other end of the line, it was a guy that said he was Pat Boone, and I hung up on him. And he called back, and I answered the phone, and he said, please don't hang up. He said, I am Pat Boone, and he said, I've gotten a tape of what you do, and I want to try to help you. And so it was the mid-70s that I signed my first recording agreement to record a Christian rock record. And I was in a touring band for 17 years called DeGarmo and Key, a very original name, I might add. See, now my name's DeGarmo. It's all we could think of. And had a good run of it. And in the mid-'80s, I started an independent record label called Forefront Records, and I signed a group called DC Talk, which became very popular, along with many others in those days. And that's how I ended up at EMI, is that I sold my business to EMI and have worked for them ever since in one form or fashion, either running one of their record divisions or now in the music publishing. Publishing is a pretty old term. It's a pretty stuffy term, one that came probably in the 1600s, you know, when you had guys that were printing books, and the only way to get music from one person to another really was to write it down and hand it to them on a piece of paper. You know, and since then it's obviously evolved as other things have, but we've kept the word and the term music publishing. A lot of people call music publishing the foundation or the real estate of the music business, because it's about the songs. And without songs, you wouldn't have CDs. Without songs, you wouldn't have ringtones, you wouldn't have ringtunes, you wouldn't have iTunes, you know, and so songs are where everything else comes from. And songwriters may or may not necessarily be the artists that record the songs. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Music publishing is a pretty fun place to be these days because you get to do all kinds of crazy stuff and cool stuff, from films and television to video games to ringtones to websites to radio station performance play to the sale of CDs. We actually sign writers that are also artists, and we develop those guys, do showcases with them, get them signed to record labels, follow their careers. In the world of music publishing, you kind of get to do everything. It's just a little bit of a stuffy, misunderstood term, I might add. But you know, you'll find that most people that understand the music business understand that publishing is truly one of the sweet spots to be. We actually develop, you know, artists that are writers. We've developed 2 things this year, and in the process of doing 2 more, to where we, you know, I have A&R guys that go and visit the venues to where these groups play, and we find people that we think, you know, are good songwriters and are also good performers, and we sign them, and you know, and we do demos on them, and then we shop them to record labels. Remember, record labels are about promoting and selling artists. Song publishers are about promoting and selling songs. You know, it's a little bit different, but it all goes to the same place. We here at EMI CMG, we have about 320 songwriters that we publish. And so it keeps us busy. Of the 320 that we have, I'd say about 200 of those, maybe 225 of those are artists, and some of them are 4 to a band, you know. So and then we have about probably 25 or 30 guys that are purely songwriters, and then about 25 or 30 guys or girls that are music producers. You know, that the producers in the studios today do a lot of songwriting, and depending on what genre they're involved with, they do more than others. You know, urban records pretty much are all written with the artist and producer, because, you know, they want a particular sound of loops or programming or this or that usually is very unique to producers, and so the artists will come to them and they'll write the material together. But we do, you know, we try to give them all attention. We do get a catalog. Our catalog is about 40,000 songs or so. It's not an overwhelmingly big catalog, but it's one that definitely keeps us hopping. We have a group of people that spend each and every day, all day long, getting those songs into various mediums and exploiting it. You know, we have some guys that do songbooks, which are becoming quite the commodity digitally, as you can imagine. And we have guys that pitch to video games all day long, and guys that do film and television. You know, we do a lot of business in motion pictures. Publishing is a copyright. It's an intellectual property that is based on the musical and the score of a song. And computers have changed the way that people make music. Just like, you know, in visual arts, computers have changed the way that people do graphic arts to the way that they, you know, create motion pictures these days. And you have a lot of people that are making music today that can make recordings of music that maybe 10 years ago couldn't do it quite in the same way. You know, 10 years ago, if you were a songwriter, you virtually had to somehow be a musician as well. And today, in the digital age, you have people that can, you know, sit in their bedroom with programs. One very popular one's called GarageBand. That people buy on Macintosh computers. You probably get it on PCs as well. And, you know, you can do the drums, and you can do the bass, and you can do the, you know, the keyboards and the guitars, and you can actually craft a song that way. And at the same time, you create a chronicle of the song, because until you record it somehow, there's really no way to talk about it. One of the misunderstood things that we do is, me as a publisher, EMI as a publishing company, we can't necessarily accept unsolicited material in the mail, because there's a lot of notorious guys out there that wait until a song is on the radio and then claim that they wrote it and sent it to you 3 years before, you know, and will institute some sort of legal action against you. There's some pretty simple ways that you can protect your intellectual property. If you record it, you can actually mail it back to yourself. You know, mail yourself a CD of your song in a dated envelope, you know. Things like that that are easy. Now, if you want to get more serious in that, you can go online to the Copyright Office, the United States Copyright Office, and you can file what they call a PA form, and you pay your $10, and that is the official copyright of a song. Now, interesting enough is we have so many songs that we get in. We as a publisher, you know, the legal guys, they'll all roll over in their graves and hear me say this, but we don't necessarily do a copyright form until we know that that song is going to be recorded professionally somewhere, you know. So you as somebody at home, I wouldn't encourage you necessarily to do that, but I would encourage you to chronicle it and date it in case somewhere, you know, some creepy person steals your song, which can happen. It does happen. In the world of revenue and publishing, there are many different revenue streams that come to the songwriters. For example, did you know when a song is played on the radio, the person that gets paid for that performance on the radio is the publisher and the songwriter, not the artist. The artist gets paid when CDs are sold or if they perform that publicly, you know, in a concert. But the people that get paid off of television play, off of motion picture play, off of radio play are the publishers and the writers. Interesting little note that most of you probably did not know. And if you take all the radio stations in the world and you start adding them up and you add those performances, you can see how that when you have a song that is played on multiple stations, you know, literally hundreds of thousands of times, that it can become millions of dollars, literally, you know, over one song, especially if it's a global hit. That's one way you get paid. Obviously, you know, if your songs are in print, you get paid a different royalty. If they're in motion pictures, you get paid what's called a synchronization royalty. You know, mechanical royalties, that's an old word too. Remember I talked about publishing being an old word? Mechanical is almost as old. But it means that you're paid off of a device that's a mechanical device, whether it be a CD or an album. Some of the rappers still know what LPs are, you know. Or, you know, anymore it's cassette tapes, you know. And it's going to become anything that actually stores and plays music is what it's going to become, called a mechanical royalty. Publishing is obviously very valuable in really every kind of music, you know, maybe the most valuable actually, but in Christian music, because that, you know, so many of our songs are sung in churches and globally, really, that it's those kind of performances, and it sounds strange to say it's a performance in a church, but it actually is, you know. And the way that the songwriters and publishers are paid for that, you know, is even more important in some ways. I mean, if you're going to be involved in the creative side of the music business, you have to have some sort of notion of what it is to create a song or to record a song. You know, it's to be musical is helpful. Now, there are other parts of the music business that's not as necessary in. If you want to be in business affairs, you know, or marketing, or those kinds of things. But if you're going to be in the inception of songs, it's helpful to, you know, be musical in some ways. I tell everybody in this business that the most important thing is people got to want to they got to want to talk to you. The first rule of business is they got to want to pick up the phone on the other end. If it's not a pleasant experience, you know what I mean? That's the first rule. And business is very relational, and it's the people that have been around a long time or the people that have relationships that are very long and deep and trusting. There are two very discrete, different parts of music publishing. One of them is called the creative side, and one of them is the administration side. Me being president of the division, I'm over both of those. The administrative side are the people that license songs and then collect the royalties thereof. And we do it on a global basis. We have sub-publishers all over the planet that represent our catalog for us and represent those performances, whether they're on radio or television or on CDs or songbooks or whatever, those usages, and then collect from the various entities and send us the royalties, and we process them and then pay the writers. That's what the administrative side do. And I have people that license music. When labels use music, when television shows use music, they request it formally, and that we quote them a rate. Some of those rates are preset by Congress, and some of them are negotiated on the spot, you know. And we have a group of people that do that. Then we have another group of people that's the creative people. They're kind of the marketing people, if you will. You know, they market songs by making people aware of songs, whether it's through various formats of, you know, mobile ringtones or ringtunes. You know, tone is like a little synthesizer playing the song. Tune is actually playing the recording that the artist made, you know. But that's when every time that happens on your phone, the publisher is paid, and in return, I pay the writer. That's a big part of our business. And mobile business is an enormous growing business in the world today. And that's one of the reasons it's great to be a publisher today. But that's, you know, two of the things that we do. And then we have creative guys that actually find new writers and new artists. So depending on what your niche is, you can be in the administrative side, which is very business, even accounting based, you know, in music publishing, or you can be on the creative side. And it's my wonderful job to try to get those people in the same room to talk to each other. You've got to get in, you know. I'd say probably a third of my department is coming through an intern program from a university somewhere, you know, to where that they'll come and work for us, and we just figure out for one reason or another we can't do without them, you know. So I find that's extremely effective, you know, from the schools that have music business programs. I used to be a recording engineer, and people ask me all the time, well, how did you get to do that, Eddie? Well, I got a job answering the phone at night at a studio. And sure enough, one day somebody didn't show up, and I got to do that. So it may not be the necessarily, you know, you may not start out being the executive vice president of a major corporation, you know, but you have to get your foot in the door in a business that hopefully has enough room for you to grow. And we need qualified business people in the music entertainment industry. It is a relatively small industry. If you take, you know, the employee base of the big four entertainment companies in the United States, whether it's Universal, Sony, BMG, Warner Brothers, EMI, I'm not talking film companies, I'm just talking music. You know, you're probably talking 50,000 employees or less. Now, to put that in perspective, you take one communications company, Verizon, probably has 200,000 employees. So it's a small universe of people, and it is a difficult career choice to break into it. But you have to break in at some level, and then hopefully get on the path, whether it's the business side, like I mentioned, or the creative side, to get to where you want to be. People ask me, they say, well, are you always looking for the most talented person? And I say, well, maybe not in the way that you think. You know, as a creative, talent is not all about singing. It's not all about playing your instrument. A lot of it is about fortitude and perseverance and those kinds of qualities, and doing the homework and the background, you know, that you need to do to prepare for your job. You know, I mean, if you're going to be a business person in the music field, you've got to study up. It's a complex business. You know, it's more complex than a lot of other kinds of businesses because of the various levels, and, you know, and you're creating, if you will, you know, a different product with every song. In my business, for example, you know, I've got 40,000 products, you know, and it's a little different than if you worked for, you know, P&G and you sold Tide or Palmolive. You know, and next year all you got to do is do new Tide. And you know, I'm not trying to make light of pork, but you know what I mean? It's like you got a new product every time you turn around. So you have to prepare for it. Personally, I think perseverance is absolutely as important as talent and fortitude. And I find that that the people that want to be in the music business are the guys and girls that are willing to get up early in the morning and work till late at night.